Luke Sparke, you have just completed and about to release Occupation Rainfall, which is the sequel to your film Occupation. Before I actually ask you about the film specifically, Luke, can you just describe yourself to people who don't know you in terms of what kind of filmmaker you are and how you operate as a producer?
That's a pretty loaded question, but how I am as a filmmaker. Look, I got brought up during the late '70s, early '80s, into the '90s with movies. They were a huge influence on my life. I love all that sci-fi. I go to the Comic Cons. Well, I used to go to the Comic Cons as a fan. Now I go to the Comic Cons as a director. But it's a huge influence in my life as a filmmaker. That's carried over. I'm trying to, I guess, have Michael Bay influences, but more of a Steven Spielberg sort of a stylistic without having too bombastic sometimes. But that's how I would describe myself as a filmmaker, or as how I've created how I like to direct. How I am as a filmmaker. I'm pretty much, I like being outside the box of Australian film industry. I like being a lone wolf maverick at the moment. I like being able to create my own destiny. I like having no studios or anyone over my head. I love to be able to go out and just create a world and be able to sort of not be a micromanager, but definitely have a semblance of micromanagement where I can sit down and edit the film exactly how I see fit and how I think it needs to be released to the audience. So as much as I complain about it on a daily basis, I love being able to have a finger in every pie when it comes to releasing the films that I make.
It is quite remarkable that this is your third film, and I understand that, as with Occupation, the first film, with this one, there's no government money in it. You didn't go to any funding bodies here for finance?
Correct. Correct. We obviously, the Australian government offers the 40% tax rebate for productions that film out here, which you get after the fact of filming it. So knowing that is a huge feather in the cap for independent finance. But no, we made a conscious decision, especially on this one early on, that to do the sort of size of this film and to do it the way I want to do it, it's best if we keep it all in-house and don't go out and try to get government or studio money. And it allowed myself and the team to shoot the film in blocks, where we shot the film in 2018, had a break, came back in 2019, had another break, and throughout that time we were able to make sequences larger, bring in more actors, show the film to people, and you couldn't just do that in a normal filmmaking sense where everything has to be locked off at the beginning and you know what you're going to get going into it. We were able to continue to grow and nurture this particular film as it went along.
This is a very rude question, I know, but can you tell me what the budget on this film was, even if it's a ballpark, and how you raised the finance?
The ballpark of this budget is 20 million plus. How I raised it was completely independently through private investors who were friends and family, or people that came along and watched Occupation, number one, and saw it on Netflix and thought that there's something to it, or they think it's a good franchise. They thought that they could see something in it. My producers raised a lot of it themselves by maxing credit cards and mortgaging houses and putting up collateral and doing anything we possibly could to get it across the line. And then at the end, I had some very talented visual effects artists in Sydney that, with the COVID lockdown, jumped off some Marvel productions because there was no work on at the time, and sort of came in and did some massive reinvestments for us to do the work, and they came on board because they loved what we were making, this Australian sci-fi bonanza film. Bonkers.
Now, when we last spoke, I asked you to join the dots between your first film, Red Billabong, and Occupation. And there were a lot of lessons that you learned in terms of following your own instincts, about not relying too much on what other people are saying about the project and so forth. I'm going to ask you the same question again, though I want you to join the dots between Occupation and Occupation Rainfall. Now, I'm imagining that there are far fewer dots linking the two films, given that you had this sequel planned while you were in the last stages of occupation.
Correct. And sometimes, I love your questions about connecting the dots. I remember them every single time. It haunts my dreams, connecting the dots, because sometimes on the outside people can connect dots better than maybe I can because I'm so close to it. But you're correct. We did announce the film before the first one came out, and we did it as a strategy to try to say to people, there's a franchise. You don't just have to watch one and then be done with it. If you want to follow these characters, you might be able to. As a fan of films like Star Wars, you can carry on and continue on the thing. Even though I think that I went in with this film consciously making sure that you can watch this film without having to see the first one. To me, because that was a much smaller film, it's a nice backstory. But this is really where my story always wanted to begin, in this film. So yeah, the dots aren't that far to connect because, as you said, I'd already announced it, and I was already sort of in production when I was doing the premieres for Occupation One.
And what is the involvement of America in this project? You're over there, you're taking meetings. Is there a big American involvement here, or are you just over there putting the feelers out about future projects?
I haven't been over there. I haven't been over there since I sold Occupation One. Since 2017. I haven't been back. I've been here focused on this film like day in, day out for 24 hours. So really, their involvement is probably my manager that I was able to get on board after Occupation One, and him just helping out casting, getting Ken Jeong and a few other actors like that. Apart from that, just sounding boards of just watching some cuts of the film and giving some little advices here and there. Apart from that, that's it. And then America, within the first week of filming, we sold it to America, but they haven't released it obviously yet, so they're still waiting, just like everyone else is, to watch it.
Hang on a minute.
But not much.
Tell us about the sale to America. When did you sell it, and how big is the sale? That's extraordinary.
Well, Occupation One sold to America,
yeah,
and it got released. It got released on Netflix over there, and it opened at number one on Netflix, which was great for an Australian film to open at number one. And that's really what helped bring in more private investors or more actors. They were able to see that it opened up to 200 million people were able to watch it. So obviously, the size of the audience grew exponentially. So this week of this film, the same company wants to buy it, and we did sell it, and yeah.
Can you just, in a nutshell, Luke, compare the production of this film to the first film, where you related the memorable anecdote of shooting one explosion from 7 different angles? Did you have to do that on this film?
No, because this film was a lot bigger, and with that came so many more challenges that I think I came up against every single challenge you possibly could. Compared to the first one, we had, the script calls for large action scenes in massive sets that you can't really build practically. So it took us a lot to get our heads around how we're going to do green screens, and also use the technology that The Mandalorian was using LCD screens. We were doing that just before The Mandalorian actually first came out, in a much more dodgy Australian dependent way, but with the same sort of idea behind it.
Luke, the visuals of this film and the production scale of this film is really impressive. And to hear that you made it for $20 million, congratulations on that. You've obviously been able to make a film that looks a lot more expensive than that.
Yeah.
You mentioned how you faced every conceivable issue and struggle in making this film. This is a very unfair question, but are you able to crystallize that experience through an anecdote or through a particular episode while making the film?
It is a very hard question to ask, because someone asked me that yesterday, and you look back on 3 years worth of work, and at the time we had issues of how we're going to build these sets with green screens. At the same time, my producer and myself were having a baby. We had no crew, not a lot of crew that were working with us, and cast that were really supportive. So standing on set and having to do, staying up late doing your own call sheets and doing your own schedules when you're also directing and also having to do the visual effects, it just seemed like it was just never gonna happen, never gonna finish, and it's just crazy stuff.
So the film is going to get a release in the States.
Yes,
That's
in June.
In June. When
Yeah.
was that locked in? Was that locked in before you started producing the movie?
No. We sold it the first week of shooting,
Okay.
and they've been standing by for the last 2 years waiting for it. So I just heard today that it's going to be released in June.
So you had people hungry for the movie based on the first film.
Yeah. Every territory is hungry for it, and people were calling me up saying, "Just release a 90-minute version. Just use what you got, and just give us it, because we can just put it on. We can just sell it. We can put it on." I said, "No, I want to make my story. I want to make it good. I don't want just to release a movie just to get money. I want to make sure that there's action and thrills and a roller coaster ride all the way along." So I've been hammering it home. Had not released it until I was happy with it.
And is this just in America or worldwide from other territories?
Worldwide.
So you built up quite a fan base. The first film obviously built up this huge fan base and this huge sense of anticipation for the film.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems that way. Yeah.
And also, just to commend you, you mentioned that you wanted to construct the film so that you didn't need to see the first one. I got to say that that's absolutely the case. You can go into this film cold and pretty much regard it as a standalone.
Yeah.
Now, Luke, have you had any audience response from the film? And if so, what's it been like?
Well, we had a screenings at Monster Fest back in October. I was still working on the film, so we used it as almost like a test audience. Not that I could change too much, but visual effects were still being worked on, and they just were like, "Wow, it's just big. It's a roller coaster ride. Just wow." This is all I kind of got from people. So I'm waiting for them to digest the film a bit more and get back to me. Yeah, at the early screenings, we used it as a test. It was not finished, but the reactions were good and positive. And then last night, we had a red carpet screening, and people walked out, and obviously I was really eager to hear. And their reactions were more just stunned. People were catching their breath and just kept saying, "Wow, it's like a roller coaster ride. It's full of action," and just, wow. I kind of want to hear more than that, but that's all people are giving me at the moment.
Okay. Luke, I know that you're very open-minded, and I have asked you critical questions before, and I did want to offer this observation, having seen the film. Again, enjoying it, the visuals and the production of it obviously makes it very clear that you can make this standard of film in Australia in terms of a production. Story-wise, I did do a little informal vox pop, so it's not scientific, but a lot of the response that I got from people was that it was very difficult to follow because there was so much going on. And it was just hard keeping track of all the storylines and all the characters. How do you respond to that?
Oh, look, yeah, I definitely will take that. Will take that criticism. Unfortunately, I had a choice at one point in time to make it either a drama or an action film, and I chose the fast-paced action route. Yes, there is a lot to follow. I did cut a lot of scenes that were relating to the first film that were a bit more character development mental. Those characters popping up and Dan Ewing talking to the little baby and about his parents dying in the first film and stuff like that just had to go. That did slow the pace down a little bit. But yeah, I see it. I get it. Yeah, I agree with you. But to be honest, I sat there in the cinema last night and I thought, okay, it's full on, and I was a bit blown away myself. But there it is.
And you have secured a 200 screen release in Australia.
Yeah.
How'd you do that? Was it because COVID had vacated a lot of the screens? How did you secure such a major exposure?
Well, hats off to our distributor Grant for doing that. Grant at Monster Fest, Monster Pictures. He's been working tirelessly with the film for, obviously the life of it, the last 3 years. And when we screened it for Event and Hoyts and the large chains, they were fully on board.
Luke, congratulations on mounting a production of this scale and ambition, and making it look so extraordinary. As I say, I do have a standing issue with just how complex that story is and how difficult it might be for some people to follow. Then again, people are in the habit of seeing films of this nature several times, so that might actually play into your hands, I imagine.
Yeah, that's one thought that went through my head.
You've actually been developing other projects apart from this, so you've actually been working as a producer developing other films, I think with the intention of having other people direct them and write them. I just want to know how that enterprise is going.
Yep. So I definitely have a writer's room now that I'm bringing in writers to polish and work on my ideas. I'm much more focused on directing and editing and creating worlds. So I've got a couple of writers' rooms happening with different genres. There's an action comedy and another sci-fi one and a TV series. So yeah, that's all chugging along, and hopefully there'll be some news coming out soon about one of those things at least.
Final question: how is Occupation 3 going? Have you already sold that? Have you already made a deal for that?
I have got a deal for that one. Obviously, at the end of this movie, I make it pretty clear that I want to continue. So I do have a deal, but this time we're waiting to see the response of the opening weekend.
In terms of the Australian industry at the moment, you are a fairly young guy, because you not only obviously have, pretty formidable creative side, but you also, have learnt the business to the point where you can pre-sell a third part of a trilogy before the second part's actually opened. So you're probably a good example of what the Australian film industry needs more of.
Yeah, without obviously hard question to talk about myself, but yes would be my answer.